Welcome to Season 3 of the You Belong podcast by Faith Young Adults, where no matter who you are, where you're from, or what you've done, you belong. I'm your host, Brayden Benvenuti. Let's get real. Welcome back to the You Belong podcast. My name is Brayden, your host, and we got an amazing guest with us. Tell us who you are.
I'm Lindsay Bishop.
Boom, Lindsay Bishop. So excited to have you on the podcast. First time.
Yes.
How does it feel?
Nerve-wracking, to say the least.
Definitely understand. I've gotten a lot less nervous now because I've done it like every week for a long time now.
Right.
But the first few I did with no guests, just by myself, so those were a lot more nerve-wracking. The microphone in front of you just kind of like makes it very official.
It does, for sure.
It's going to be a good podcast. I'm excited for it. So, Lindsay, people probably maybe don't know who you are.
Probably not.
So, let's tell us about yourself, about your family, where you're from, what you like to do in your free time.
Sure.
Share a little bit.
Awesome. So I am Lindsay, and I'm the Connections Director here at Faith Church, and I started officially in January. I'm originally from Maryland, and I'm married to Taylor Bishop.
The North.
Yes, the North represent, right? Taylor's my husband. He is the worship leader at Lawrenceburg campus, and we are here because we were called to faith, which is pretty cool, right? To move that far away. Mm-hmm. I'm a mom. I have a baby who's 2 years old.
Nice.
Yes.
Jolie,
keeps me very
she's so
busy.
sweet.
Yes. Well, she's also 2, so she's sweet,
so
but she's 2.
Not sweet.
Yes, exactly. What else? That's about it. I mean, I work in ministry. I'm a mom. Mm-hmm. I still do some teaching. We'll get into that. I was a teacher for 9 years before giving that up to come into ministry. So, pretty busy a lot.
What do you do? I mean, you probably don't have a lot of free time because you have a 2-year-old.
No.
But what, do you have like a favorite hobby or a show maybe that you're watching on Netflix or anything?
I would say favorite hobby is party planning and going on vacations.
Party planning, vacations.
And
nothing
vacations,
like it.
I need, I work hard so I can play hard.
Yeah.
So,
Boom, there it is. I can attest the party planning is superb because
you.
you've thrown some great parties that I've been able to be at. So
thanks.
That's who Lindsay is. Lindsay's super pumped to have you on here.
Mm-hmm.
It's super cool to have another Northerner with me in the South. We're few and far between, but luckily even our lead pastor is a Northerner as well.
Very true.
But got a question for you before we really get into this stuff, to kind of just like get our brains thinking, get the people involved.
Okay.
Always got to go with a would you rather question.
Oh, no.
And so I always have trouble finding a good one, but when I do find a good one, it's very difficult to choose. Now, this one might be not super hard to choose, so we'll see.
Don't judge my response.
I won't.
Okay.
So, would you rather never be able to go out in the day or never be able to go out in the night?
Well, my answer now as a 30-year-old mom is going to be different because my bedtime is very early now.
That's true.
So 32-year-old Lindsay would say I would sacrifice the night because I need sleep so that I can be awake during the day.
That makes sense. What would 22-year-old Lindsay?
I think it'd be harder because I was kind of a night owl then. Mm-hmm. So let's say 22-year-old Lindsay would flip.
Okay.
So
cool.
She would give up.
I think initially when I saw it, I was like, I got to give up the day. I love being out at night or like the stars are out. Like I always am hanging out with people later at night. We're out to eat at a restaurant or whatever it is. But then I'm like, well, a lot happens in the day. That's when everybody else is out and about. And I think it'd make life a lot harder. So I think I would have to sacrifice the night. Now I would still stay awake.
Yes.
But I would just be at home. So I'd never be able to go out at night because I think life would just be too hard
You
if
know,
you couldn't go out in the day.
I think so too. This is totally random. I think John Travolta, I read somewhere. Have you ever heard this? That
I don't
he
know.
and his wife did that.
Really?
Like they were living this lifestyle where they would give up the day and they lived at night. So they would sleep all day
Interesting.
and they were only awake at night. And I think they said it was because of paparazzi and they wanted to live like a private life. But what did they run into? Nothing's open
Yeah.
at night.
For real.
So how much life can you really be doing when you're the only people awake?
Yeah, that's pretty wild. I didn't know that was a
Fun
thing.
random fact.
But I'm not surprised because John Travolta he seems an interesting man. So
Right.
I think that would happen. But yeah, I think that would be they'd run into a lot of problems. You'd be able to go to Waffle House, and Waffle
Maybe
House.
Walmart. Some Walmarts are open 24 hours, right?
Are they?
In the north they are. I don't
Really?
know about
I
here.
need them to come back to 24/7.
Okay.
I mean, they close at 11 now,
Oh.
and it's just.
See, my
I
bedtime's
hate
like
that.
7, so I wouldn't know
You
that.
don't even know. Because I used to, it's 12:30. I'm like, man, I need a box of cereal. I just go to Walmart.
Yes.
Now I can't do that because they
No.
close. Walmart, if you're listening, go back to 24/7.
Please.
But listeners, what would you do? Rather give up going out in the day or go out at night? Which one would you give up? At first, I thought it was a tough question, but honestly, it's not that tough because you need to be able to go out in the day.
Yes.
So, Lindsay, you'd rather not go out at night because you're asleep anyways, so that makes sense.
Tired.
I guess that's what happens when you become a mom and when you get into your 30s.
Yes, it's both. It's age and motherhood, I think.
Is like turning 30, 31, 32, is that as like scary as it's thought, like as it's pictured whenever you're in your 20s?
Right?
I need to know to be able to prepare.
I used to I was like the countdown. I was like, oh no, I'm 25. Oh no, I'm 26. Oh no, I'm 27. And then when I was 30 in one day, it felt the same as 29 and
Okay.
28 and 27. Truthfully, from my perspective, the motherhood transition was way harder than turning 30.
I would imagine
I
so.
still feel like I connect people in their 20s. I don't feel like I'm in my 30s. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess early 30s still feels like, I don't know what difference there is between 32-year-old Lindsay and 28-year-old Lindsay. Feels the same.
Not a lot. Yeah.
Motherhood, though.
Yeah.
Definitely having a child changed everything. And they say that, and you think, no, it won't. It won't change anything for me. It changes everything.
I bet.
For sure.
I saw a TikTok and it was a dad and he had his two kids like behind him, like they were like eating cereal or something, and he's like pouring coffee, and the caption or whatever was like, when you realize you made decisions to never allow yourself to sleep in ever again. And I'm like, wow, I'm really thinking about if I ever want to have kids.
Yes. No, I don't blame you. When I was pregnant the whole time, I loved to sleep in. Like sleeping in was my thing. And I was like, I'm never going to be able to do this. I can't wake up earlier than 9. And here I am, 6:15,
Oh,
waking
man.
up. I have no choice.
That's tough because I love sleeping in too. So I'm
that's
sure
the hard
that's
part.
a hard
which is why I
transition.
have to adjust and go into bed earlier.
That's
So it's
true.
like you have to just change everything.
Because
And
if you don't, then you're going to get like 3 hours of sleep.
Yep. And
If
you
that.
say, exactly. And you say things like, well, my kid, I'll just make him. Joke's on you. Good luck. Make
Oh,
a
man.
1-year-old do anything. Like,
Oh.
not
So
happening.
if you're out there, if you're listening and you like to sleep in, you need to really think about
You do.
if you want to have children.
You do. You do. And even if you have a great sleeper, like they wake up at 6 a.m. They just do.
They just do. That makes sense.
Yes.
So Lindsay, we're not here to talk about children
Yeah.
the whole time, or if you'd rather stay in during the day, stay in during the night,
Right.
or what. But let's get into what we're going to talk about. Kind of a broad kind of subject,
Okay.
but I think can be helpful for young adults, for young adult girls to hear from a woman's perspective, because it's very easy for me to get guys on here and talk with them. But I'm sure there's female listeners who are like, when I need to listen to a woman. So
Right.
glad to have you on here. So Lindsay,
Thanks.
you mentioned it for a short second, but what is your role on staff here at Faith Church? Kind of explain what you do here on staff.
Sure. So they brought me on as the connections director. So anything related to getting connected here at church to one another, to programs, all falls under me. So if someone's looking to serve, I help them with that. If they're looking to go through Grow You and learn more about the church and the membership process, that's me. Connect groups, as well. That's a main focus. If they want to get into a group or they want to start a group, I kind of help them with that. And then also, I'm kind of learning that also falling under the umbrella of my job is just being myself in the lobbies and making friends and connections with people. Just genuine connections. So
sure.
it's a fun job because my job is to make friends with people and then help other people make friends. So
Yeah,
it's a
that is
fun
pretty
job.
cool.
It's a cool job. It's very unique, and I never would have thought anything like this existed. So it's been pretty awesome the last couple months.
Yeah.
adjusting to this new job.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
And so you said your husband, Taylor, he is the worship leader at our Lawrenceburg campus.
Yes, he is.
And so you're technically at our central campus. So do you kind of flip back and forth? Are you going to our Lawrenceburg campus too, or are you staying here? What's that tension like with your husband being over there and you're here and kind of got to go back and forth?
That's actually probably been one of the hardest adjustments, I think, because I was super plugged in Lawrenceburg.
Yeah.
So I got pulled away, and I love Lawrenceburg. I love Florence, and I love the Shoals.
Yeah.
I'm also directing them as well.
Yeah.
So I bounce back between 3 campuses.
Okay.
So I spend most of my time in Florence. Occasionally I'm in Lawrenceburg, and occasionally I'm in the Shoals. But
Gotcha.
It's been a challenge,
Yeah, I
you
bet.
know, but we do live far from Lawrenceburg, so I do not have to wake up at 5 a.m. on Sundays when
That's
I'm in
true.
Florence.
That
So
is true.
I get to sleep until 6.
That's a plus.
Yes, sleeping in.
So you're the connections director. You know, your job is to make sure people are connected. They make
Yes.
friends. You get to make friends with them and make sure people are just connected in the church.
Yes.
So obviously connection is important, or else you would
Absolutely.
not have a job for it.
Exactly.
So speak a little bit on how important connection is in the church.
Oh, it's so important. You know, one of our slogans is that life is better connected, and it's so true. And I think I can speak to this because I came from a church that was just about the same size as Faith when I was a young adult and into most of my 20s. I was actually at that church like 13 years.
Okay.
And I'm going to admit something. I was a pew sitter. I came in on Sundays and I left, and I never, ever felt connected. So, you know, being in the position I'm in now, I kind of look at like 23-year-old Lindsay being that, and I'm like, okay, what did she need and what can I do for her? So like looking at 23-year-old me, like if somebody would have approached me, that could have changed everything. And I think it would have created a connection for me in the church. So I think, you know, we were meant to do life connected to one another. We were created for it. You know, we crave relationship, we crave friendship. And like, how is the church going to do its mission and its purpose if we're not connected to one another? It's so vital and it's so important. And it's so important for our spiritual growth and journeys as individuals as well, to have accountability and relationship. So I think it's pretty interesting that I'm now in this role because I'm on the flip side, but it does give me a lot of perspective, I think, into, you know, what would I have needed and then kind of help me go that direction when I am trying to seek people out and help them get connected and help them, you know, find their place here.
For sure. I can relate a lot because whenever I first got involved here, I went here at Faith Church for like a year and just like came, sat in the back, Sunday mornings, left, didn't talk to anybody. And that was that. Like I didn't do anything else during the week with the church. I was Sunday morning service. That's it. And would leave for a whole year. And it was comfortable. And I had a girlfriend at the time, so it was just me and her. We would go in and just leave or whatever. But that's not, I don't think that's the design of the church.
No.
It's not just to come and get the service and then you just leave. Like that's not fulfilling in what God has called the church to be. And so what's crazy is like it took me getting out of that relationship for me to get in more plugged into the church, but the church having the young adult ministry available, I ended up going to one of the services and then it was on from there. That's and just got involved. And so thankfully, like I took the initiative in that finally to do it. So it wasn't somebody that like had come up to me and got me plugged in, but it was the church had something available for me to get into. And so that's why I love being able to now come full circle, and now I'm leading that young adult ministry.
Amazing,
and like
isn't
get
it?
people to not just be a just not sit in service, but they get involved, they get connected, and they're doing things, they're serving, they're getting to know more people, because I can only connect so many people. You can only connect with so many
one
people.
person, yes.
But if you can connect with someone and then connect them with someone else, you kind of pass them off. Like it's not like you just ignore them now, but it's like you connected to people. And that, I think that's really the goal of connection in the church is like, yes, us as staff members, we need to connect with as many people as we can, obviously. But it's also, we have to create the spaces for the people at the church to connect.
To kind of find their tribes and find their circles.
And so I think that's what was available for me to be able to, you know, go from just sitting in the service, which is super easy to do. It's comfortable.
It's comfortable.
To stepping out, going to a young adult service where I knew nobody, and then it was great. Ended up meeting people and like, hey, they want to meet people too. Like,
right? It's like, oh, I'm not so alone. So I have a question for you. I'm going to kind of turn the tables here.
All right.
So if you were to compare like how it felt when you were just coming on Sundays to now. Let's pretend you're not in ministry job yet. You're just plugged in. Like how did it feel? Like the difference, you know? I know being, a Sunday person, it's comfortable, but like, was there loneliness there? Was there?
It transformed a lot of my life.
Yeah.
Like, so I was a Christian already, but it was just Sunday morning at 11 o'clock until 12:10 that church took up my time. But then when I joined the youth team, I got involved with the young adults. Like, okay, now it's Sunday morning for an hour. It's Wednesday night for 2.5 hours. It's whatever night that young adult ministry was on then. It's 2 hours then. It's now I'm meeting new people. I'm doing different things on the weekend with new people at church. I have new friends. So like Jesus already transformed my life through salvation.
Right.
But then getting involved in the church and connected transformed just kind of my day-to-day living of what I'm doing kind of. And so
kind of brought your call out too.
Yeah.
Through
And
that. That's amazing.
Definitely. I mean, if I never get involved in the young adult ministry, like I don't know if I'm here in full-time ministry at this moment. It may have taken longer. It may have been a different route, whatever. But
that's amazing.
But it definitely changed just my lifestyle of what I was doing, what was important. And then it also, like you said, it brought out my calling of like, there's a responsibility on us as church members. Because before I came on staff, I got super involved with the youth and with the young adults. And so I was a youth leader mentoring youth on Wednesday nights and like getting involved in high schoolers' lives, but I wasn't getting paid. I wasn't on staff yet.
Right.
Because I think that people in the church that aren't on staff, like they have just as much a responsibility to connect, to mentor the next generation, to serve, to be involved in the church.
Absolutely.
And so that's what I think that's what brought out all of that in me of like, man, I have a responsibility to do this. Like I joined the youth team. I had to be there every Wednesday night. Like there was a responsibility to be there.
Right.
But I loved it. And God showed me time and time again of like how, man, I was lazy. I was doing nothing.
Yes.
I was just wanted it all for myself. And it was just like, I'm just going to go to Sunday service because that's what you do as a Christian. And
I can totally relate.
Yeah. But
yes.
But once you get involved, once you take that like first step of going somewhere, going to a service or going to a connect group, whatever it is, like it's scary before you do it. But once you do it, it's like, wow, this was not it shouldn't have been as scary as it was.
Yes.
I love that you said that. I think there's a handful of times though that maybe it doesn't work out like the way you wanted to, and okay, now you just need to find a different group of people or try something different. Maybe that serve team wasn't for you.
Yes.
And try a different one. I think sometimes we find the excuse of like, oh, it didn't work. I was right. I shouldn't have done this. Try again. Like don't lose faith in because the first time whatever it didn't click.
Yes.
Because even like it was a journey for me. Like the first young adult service I went to was still like I'd met people, but I was like I still like know them. I was still nervous to go the next time because it was like I don't have a solid relationship yet with them. And so all of that to say, like taking the next step to be involved, to get connected, to join a serve team, to just like take the responsibility of building the church, transforms priorities, transforms your life, changes, like all of that shaped me to who I am now. Like I am a way more outgoing and just like, I guess more fun to be around person than I was before. Because like I didn't do a whole lot, but now I'm having to talk to high schoolers. I'm having to talk to middle schoolers and with other youth leaders and doing different things. Like the more interaction you have,
and you see new qualities kind of coming up out of you that God had put in you that you had all along that you would have never known. Exactly. I love what you said about it being nervous, like the first time with somebody. Because what I've been telling people, I'm building a connections team, so we're gonna have a new team being started here to help me.
That's awesome.
Which is gonna be amazing. But what I've been telling some of these people as I've been having these recruitment conversations is like, hey, you're only a stranger once, so once I meet you, I'm gonna get nervous when I'm going up and talking to someone I've never met before. But now I know your name and I know something about you. You're not a stranger anymore. So like the more that you put yourself out there, the easier and easier that it's gonna get.
For sure.
And then along the friendship, like, oh, this didn't work, I'm just done.
Yeah.
Lauren ironically said something to me when we were preparing for the garden about friendship, and she said, when you are dating, if you go on one bad date, are you just swearing off dating forever. No.
Some people do that.
So, I'm never getting married because that one date went so bad.
You say that, and then 2 weeks later, you like see another person. You're like, okay, maybe.
Yes, and we need to have that perspective with our friendships and our circles within the church as well.
For sure.
You know, just because that wasn't the right fit doesn't mean that you weren't created to have relationship or to have a purpose in this church.
Yeah,
that just wasn't the right fit, and that's okay. You know,
Yeah.
so when she said that to me, I'm like, light bulb went off. She's so right.
That's so good.
It's easy for us to write off friendships, relationships, serving opportunities.
Yeah.
But we don't want to give that dating piece up. So if we look at it the same way, it's still just as much of a desire within us, whether or not we realize that.
For sure.
You know,
no doubt. So, I love where we're going with this conversation. So, what was it like for you? Because this is your first time working at a church in full-time ministry, right?
Yes. So I started it's kind of like a gray area. I started out at 21. So I was a young graduate. I graduated college at 21 and I went right into teaching high school.
Oh, wow.
It was at a Christian school. So it was like I was getting paid and it was a teaching position, but it was at a Christian school. So it was kind of ministry. You know what I mean? It wasn't like the church itself, but it was attached to a church, you know, and it was Christian education. So I taught English. So we were reading the Bible, we were including scriptures, we were praying. So there was a lot of ministry opportunities within that.
Yeah, gotcha.
For sure.
So were you involved in a church then?
I was a pew sitter.
You were a pew sitter then. So
yes.
You were just, so what kind of challenges did you kind of experience maybe with teaching, like throughout all those years you were a teacher with the Christian school, but then also I think where you were at a public school as well.
In Baltimore City.
Yeah. So
yes.
I guess talk about that, just like which you were just going to church, you weren't involved, so you didn't really have to balance the like work and like being involved in church. But what challenges kind of just in your job as teaching did you face, you know, because I know it's scary sometimes. I'm sure there's a lot of people getting ready to graduate college, scared about this going into real life and their job and everything. So maybe speak on just, you know, kind of that transition going into your first teaching job and like the challenges of being in your career now.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a hard transition for everybody. You know, I was young, so that was a big part of it. Is I was the youngest by multiple decades. I think the closest teacher in age to me was in her 40s.
Oh, wow.
This was the Christian school that I actually went to for most of my life. So I knew the principals. There were other teachers on staff who were my teachers. And I think that was hard because they still saw me as that fourth grader, that 11th grader. So like, I think I really felt this need to prove myself. Also at the time, I think young Lindsay I still struggle with self-esteem, but I think it was really bad in my early 20s. I didn't know who I was at all. I didn't have a good foundation in Christ, even though I thought I did.
Yeah.
But I think that I really sought approval of others. Like that was where my worth came from, was what I did and what people thought of me. And I think that actually created an unhealthy balance. So a lot of the challenges that I felt truthfully were not necessarily because of my age or being in a career, but it was actually myself that was causing a lot of these problems. But I mean, there were issues like trying to prove myself because I'm young and they're looking at me like I'm young, and I'm also teaching kids that are like 6 years, 5 years younger than me. They're almost the same age as me, and I'm trying to get respect out of them. So it was this like really hard in between type position where it's like I have to be an adult and I have to, you know, be professional, and it was tough. It was definitely a tough transition for sure.
Did you find yourself like, were you able to prove yourself, like trying to? Like I feel like sometimes we feel like, you know, us when you're young in your 20s, you're out of college, you're in your first job or whatever, like we feel the need to, you know, establish like respect and all that, and just like and prove ourselves. But I don't think that always is. You don't always have to. Like I think it becomes unhealthy. Like if you're just always trying to prove yourself. So like, were you successful in proving yourself, or was it more harmful?
That's such a good question. I think I was successful in it, but looking back in hindsight, I wish I would have realized that is where God had placed me, and I was absolutely equipped for it. Because I mean, knowing that now does nothing, but knowing it then would have given me more peace. Like the successful rate, I was still successful. It still worked out. I still proved myself. I was professional, got really good reviews. Students were happy, parents were happy. Like on paper, like it looked perfect, but internally, it didn't feel perfect, you know? And I think that if I would have just realized like, God gave me these abilities. He opened this door, and I just need to just exist and be and just know that this is my call right now. And I would have had so much more peace, and it would have been so much easier on me.
I think that's it right there, is the peace. Like, you know? I think there, especially, I think I hate saying like, oh, in this generation, anxiety and fear and
but
worry
it's
is
true.
rampant. But I think it always was too, though. So I
Yes.
don't want to say like it is prevalent now, but I think it always was. But regardless, the fear and the worry that comes with not feeling like you're professional enough or not feeling like you're qualified for the position you're in is what is the worst. And so I think what God can bring, what
Yes.
the satisfaction that he can bring, and like knowing like I didn't do this on my own. Like
Yes.
God opened this door and God put me here. Like it's not like you got that job out of high school. Like you went to school.
I
like you
prepared.
had some years of
Yes.
experience of learning.
Yes.
And yes, you're young, but everybody's has to start at some point. And I think if we can push the anxieties and the fear to God, like he takes that and
He does.
and it's the peace that comes with it. Now it doesn't make it just a cakewalk.
Oh no, you're still gonna have challenges,
yeah,
but
you
it's gonna
still
be
gotta work.
easier
Exactly.
when you're
Like
facing them.
it's just you have that peace of mind of like, I know I don't have as much experience as everybody else, but I know I have some experience, and I know God is filling in the gaps.
Yes.
And like I'm here
for a reason.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. And so I think if you can realize that, like, it's not our job to worry about what's going to happen.
No,
Like it's not our
no.
job to be afraid.
Yes.
In the Bible it says perfect love casts out all fear. That's what Jesus does when Jesus is in your life, and
Yes.
and that's like he's in and through everything. Like he'll cast out that fear, and
He will.
But if you don't allow him to, like it's still going to be there. You got to give it to him. You got to give those worries away. Like you can't hold on to them, because
Right.
the more you do, the bigger they're going to get.
Yes, so true. It's so true.
So now you're not teaching.
Not teaching anymore. Yeah.
You're working now just in a church.
Yes.
And so maybe talk about the challenges you face now in ministry, what that looks like differently. Like, because I'm sure there's some people that maybe want to go into ministry or maybe
Yeah.
work at a church. And so talk about maybe some of the challenges you face with your job now.
Okay.
And the difficulties maybe that's brought in your mind, just maybe day-to-day stuff, whatever that is.
Yeah, I think that there's a weight that comes with ministry as well that I never really understood. And, Taylor and I have been together for 5 years, and he was in ministry before I was. So when we were first together, like I was still teaching. I was teaching in Baltimore City, now at a public school at this time.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in ministry, and I just I never understood the weight that he carried. Like I just never understood it. But now that I'm in it, it's like I'm responsible.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I have to kind of balance sometimes because I take it too far. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, if I miss this one person that didn't get connected, then I just feel like broken over it, And I think that like the weight that comes with it, trying to balance that and realize like God's going to work through me. Like if that person is going to get connected, he's going to find another way if I drop the ball. So I think there's just a lot of pressure in that regard. I'm just so grateful that I'm not walking around with the self-doubt that I carried at 21. I still have it, but it's way more manageable. And I think that these periods of time in my life have really helped kind of carry me into this, because I know I would not be successful if I was still walking the way I was walking at 21. I know it. There's no way. You're managing a lot of people. You're conversing with a lot of people, a lot of stories. You need skills and different things, to be able to do that and connect people. So I think that like for me, I'm just glad that the timing of it all is now, because I think the challenges that are there are way smaller than they would have been. Lindsay would have definitely gotten her own way for sure. I think before, but a balance like of like ministry and then life. So this has been the biggest transition for me. Teaching was 7:30 to 2:30, and I am such a type A management person that I would never have to grade at home. I could leave work at work, and I just could be present at home with Taylor, with life. And ministry is 24/7. I have texts coming in at 10 p.m. and I want to do my best. So like I'm always working. So trying to figure out a balance has been pretty difficult for me. And if I was seeking approval of others like 21-year-old Lindsay was, I would have been burnt out the first 2 weeks. So I'm grateful that God made me wait to help break me of that before stepping into this role for sure.
For sure. That is one thing, is like ministry, and even what I think is needs to be kind of not like this anymore is like even you as a teacher there, like yes, you can leave work at home, but I think there's still like a responsibility of like the relationships you maybe have at work. Like don't leave it all. Like we're still called to like be the light of Jesus wherever we are. But ministry definitely is highlighted of like like our jobs are to lead the people in the church, and so that
it doesn't
means,
turn off ever.
It's all the time, because it's just their life doesn't stop. And so we got to be there whenever.
Yes.
And like we have events at night. And so like it's preparing for things and all that. So it's just like an all the time thing
It
where,
is.
like you said, like teaching is like, well, school gets out and now
And
everybody
everything's
goes
done
home.
and you go home and
Yeah.
you're good now. Yeah.
And so I think that's a lot of people, you know, that are whatever jobs they're at, you know, they clock in and they clock out. And now they don't have to worry about it.
Or think about it.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I think there's still maybe not with, that's how you make money. That's like
Yes.
how you survive. But now like, I think it's easy to like just check out completely. Like you go
Yes.
home and you're like, oh, now I can just do nothing.
I can watch Netflix for
Yeah.
6 hours.
But I don't think that's what we're called to do either.
No,
I
it's not.
I mean, we should go invest into the friendships. Like, don't just be a recluse and now you're just like, oh, I think there's times to relax and like whatever.
Of course.
You know, regain energy. But I think we're still called to be involved in the church. Like, yes,
Pour
now
into
work
people.
is done,
Yes.
but
Church time.
yeah, go to church, be
Yes.
involved, man, pour into other people, invest into relationships, man, share the gospel with people. Like, there's a responsibility on us. Yes, our job for the day, like, is done, but
Our job as Christians is not.
never done. So
Never.
I think like, we have the opportunity to, like, we get paid to do it all the time.
Right.
And so it's harder for some people that they do have that 9-to-5 job or whatever, and it's maybe a lot more stressful and they're tired. But I think it's still, I think God can give you the energy you need. He can give you the passion you need for other people. And yes, you have a 9-to-5, like we're here 9-to-5 usually too, but it's still, we should be out in the world.
Yes.
Not of the world, like the Bible says, not of the world, but we should be able to be in the world to be able to change the world.
Yes.
And that's not going to happen if you're just at home and
Yeah.
you're like, well, I work today, I
I'm
need
tired.
to stay home.
Yeah.
So I think it's a kind of it's a tough thing because I understand, you know, we get tired.
Yes.
But I think there's days, you know, you take your rest, but then there's responsibility.
There is.
I think some people are like, I'm not a leader, or and Pastor Ryan just, you know, spoke on this
Yes.
at our last First Wednesday we had, and it was like we have a responsibility
Yes,
as a
we
church.
do.
Everybody does, to share their faith, and it's not just on people who work at a church. It's not just on the lead pastor every Sunday morning. It's on everybody.
It is.
To do that, and so I think that's people need to know. And I think
They
I just said
do.
something that kind of triggered
The leader.
Yeah,
The leader.
So maybe, and you also shared a little bit about like the self-doubt and everything that you
Yes.
had. Maybe speak on that. What would you say, like, for people that are dealing with, you know, insecurity, self-doubt in general, but also maybe in the job that they're in, or maybe the what they're majoring in, or in college, or whatever it is? Like, what would you say to those people?
Yeah, I mean, I think like with you saying that I'm not a leader, like I said that most of my like young adult life. I would look at my principal and I'm like, I never want that job. Because I was such a people pleaser that I just wanted everyone to be happy with me, and then I felt okay about myself, and I didn't want to lead others. I didn't want that responsibility, because with leadership comes responsibility and comes hard conversations and, you know, hard times. And I knew that, and I was like, no. And ironically, look at me here now, leading a ministry. I think God has a funny sense of humor for sure. But I think that with my journey, and this might apply to other people as well, of self-doubt, like it was not an overnight fix, and it still creeps in because Satan is sneaky. But like, I think that with me, I needed the time, like it needed to be a slow process. Like I'm stubborn. And for me, like God, he worked in perfect timing in my life. And now that I'm in hindsight, like it brings me to tears because I can see it. Never could have seen it when I was going through it. Yeah. So I think that like periods of waiting, which I know a lot of young adults can absolutely relate to, it's not only like God growing you, but it's also him shedding things in you, you know, that need to go. So for me in the self-doubt, there was not one day that I just woke up and I'm like, I feel great. I'm going to be a leader of a church. No, it was doors opening that I knew did not open without God flying them open, and me just having to say yes in obedience. And when you step out in obedience, that's the transformation that I've seen. Because when you know that you're obeying what God called you to without a doubt, then there's no room for self-doubt. And that's kind of where I'm at now. And that's what truly, like, I'm talking like, this is not like 10 years ago, Lindsay. Like, this is now, Lindsay. Like a year ago, it was still really, really bad, you know? But then it's like this doors open and obedience, like obeying and knowing I would not have been here without God. And like, I think that when I look back at all these different phases of my life and different jobs I had and different experience I've had, I can point to every single one and say, I needed that skill now. So I think like the big picture that we can look at is no matter where you're at, when God has a call in your life, like that has a purpose. That's part of the call. It's hard. It might be ugly. You might not know it. You might not be happy where you're at, but he's still developing things in you that will be used 100%. Whether you see it or not, it doesn't matter. It's still being used.
Yeah, that's so good. I like that. And so continuing this kind of thought, these conversations, what would you say to young adults listening, specifically girls maybe that are looking to be a leader in their career, in their job field, maybe just in their circle, like their sphere of influence, and maybe even in ministry? What would you say to the girl that wants to be a leader, or maybe even a guy too, that they just don't see themselves as a leader? And you kind of spoke on that, but maybe just keep that going
on. Like, I would say, like, not to discredit what God has created you to do. Like, he has gifted you with abilities that you may not even see. I never would have thought that I had abilities to lead people, and I'm doing it every single day. And there's never been a moment that I just was like, I'm a leader now. There you might not have that moment, and that's okay. You know, if you have this desire and you believe that God placed that on your heart, then I say step out in confidence, bravery, and obedience, and just, walk knowing, hey, this is what I believe I've been called to, and I'm going to do it. And if I fail, like, God's got me, when I was so nervous about talking at the garden, I mean, so nervous. I tried to pass that off to everyone on staff. No one would take it. And I was in prayer the night before because I was so scared. And, and I said it on stage then, and it's just kind of been what has been kind of sticking with me. I just felt in my spirit, like God kind of putting on me, like, if I've called you to it, I'm going to carry you through it. So on the bad days when I'm having a rough time, I picture Jesus picking me up and carrying me through. And I think that, like, just having that perspective and obeying, I would tell them to just stay where they're at, and also stay where you're at and appreciate where you are in the journey. Because I wish if I would have looked in those times and known, hey, there's going to be a purpose in this. There's a purpose now, but there could be a purpose later. I think that it just would have given me so much more peace, like we talked about, and confidence, and I think that there might not have been as much of a place for that self-doubt to creep in and kind of be present, and now I just have to fight it. Like, I have to fight it with scripture. I have to fight it with prayer. And actually, talking about scripture, I have a great verse I came across this week that's super helpful. It's 1 Corinthians 7:17. It's Paul writing, and he says, nevertheless, each person should live as a believer in whatever situation the Lord has assigned to them, just as God has called them. This is the rule I lay down to all churches. So kind of looking at, like, where you are now is what you've been assigned, and looking for opportunities now to grow, to reach people in your circles and to develop those leadership qualities. Leaders need to be good communicators. Maybe you're in a job that you don't even see yourself as developing communication skills, but you are, and you need that to be a leader. So appreciate where you are in the journey for sure. Yeah,
I like that. That last thought right there is, like, I think a lot of times for me especially is I'm always looking
what's
at
next.
What's next. And, like, I miss what's happening now, because even now, like, being the young adults director was like, when I was in the school of ministry, I was like, what's next? What's going to be the role after, I do the school ministry? Will I work here at Faith Church? Will I be able to get a job at a church? Do I need to go back to school? And, like, I was always worried, what's next? I'm not a leader yet. I'd got to go through more school to be a leader, whatever it is. Like, it was always what's next? And then, I do that. What's going to be after that? And now I'm, I am in a position, and now I'm finding myself like, what's 5 years going to look like? Like, am I going to be here still, or am I going to be at a different position, or am I going to move somewhere else, or what am I going to look like? What's the ministry going to look like? And it's like, so many times, especially as young people, we are so rushed about what's next. We always care about moving to what the next thing is. And we miss, the things that we were praying for. Like, because I think about this now, I'm like, I prayed for this where I'm at now. Right. And so it's like, I love that. Irresponsible of me almost to, like, not recognize what God did for me now, like looking back years ago, because I prayed for this, and now it's like discrediting to God, because I'm dishonoring too, because I'm like, I'm looking at what's next. I'm not even worried, like, I'm not even paying attention. This is an answer to prayer. I'm not even paying attention to what God did years ago, prayer to now. And I think that's a lot of times, like, even for, if you're a freshman in college, or like you're a sophomore, you're like, just, I want to graduate. I want to get out of here. I want to get this job. But, I want to, you're at the school you wanted to go to. Like, rest in that. Like, God got you to where you want to. You're at your dream school. And He's with you right now. And like, you're meeting friends. Like, it's so easy to look at what's next. And focus on that. But I think that's when we miss what's happening now. Because, think about, like, if Jesus was only focused on he's going to the cross and he's going to die. Like there's so many things he would have missed ministry wise. Like
the whole ministry,
yeah,
right?
like if he wouldn't have had his 12 disciples, if all he was like, I got to get ready. I'm going to have to die on a cross. That's what I got to prepare for. Like, I think yes, we prepare for things, but you also can't miss the present and what's happening around you. Because I think that's when a lot of like the fear and anxiety come in, because now you're just worried about the future
and you're missing out. Like you're like blinded to everything you see, and I think that kind of steals like gratefulness. Like you don't even see where God has answered your prayers. And that's one thing I think for me, at least me, I don't know if everybody feels this way, but like I'll pray for something, and if I don't get like that like answer I want, I think that it wasn't an answered prayer. It might have been answered 3 years down the road, and I miss it. I miss it because I'm not like aware, and now sitting here when I'm really reflective, I'm like, this was an answer to prayer. It took 5 years. This was an answer to prayer. He was telling me wait, but he like, and it answer, whether it's the answer you want or not, still was answered, So I think that like you saying that is so true, and it's definitely given me a lot of peace now too. I'm like, oh my goodness, look at this.
Yeah, for real.
And I wish I would have just accepted it in the journey and just seen all the answer to prayers that were happening as they were happening. Why do I have to see them 10 years later? I could have seen them then. And
it's hard to do that. Like,
it's
hard to practice that. But I like that. I mean, you have a little, like, you lived through your 20s.
Yes.
And I'm not saying like, oh, you're 32.
I'm
like,
so old now.
You don't act like it. And so that's what's really cool. But I think it's cool to hear your perspective of like, yes, like those like stuff was answered years down the road. Like, so we got to have the patience.
We do. We have to
because
wait.
We live in a generation that is just, we get everything instant and now. And so we expect God to do the same. And God is transcendent over what we experience here. He's over the time. He is over all of that. And so it looks different on his, what his timeline looks like. And so it's hard to do in practice. It's easy to talk about, but it's also encouraging to hear from you of like, there are things that you may not think God's listening, or it's not going to happen, or the prayer's not answered. Like, you just, keep that in the back of your mind. Like it may take years for whatever that is. It may take years to get rid of that self-doubt.
That habit,
might take, habit. It might take years to get to the job you want.
But he's still faithful.
Yes,
it doesn't matter,
That's what's so
he's
good.
He's there. It is so good.
Like, sometimes it's like hard to believe, but like he is. Like he's still faithful, because look.
And even when you don't believe it, he's still faithful. Yeah. That's the part of my journey. It's like I didn't believe it, and oh my goodness, if I would have stopped steering my own ship in my early 20s, I would have saved myself so much heartache, so much guilt, so much shame that I just did not. I wasn't intended to have, and I did not need to have.
Yeah.
But God's journey for me, I was not supposed to be married until I was 28. And 21-year-old Lindsay did not want to accept that. I didn't know that I was going to be 28. I looked at it as, he's never going to give that for me. Everybody else is going to have it. I'm going to be alone. So you know what? I'm going to make it happen for myself. And
that doesn't
caused
work out.
myself so much unnecessary pain,
Yeah, I get
and it's
that
like if
for
I would have just accepted the wait. But here's the beauty in it is I didn't wait, and he was still faithful. Everything that he had intended for me was going to happen no matter what I did. Not saying, hey, that's a free pass, go do what you want, because you're going to feel the repercussions of it. It's not going to be easy. Your journey's going to be way harder than it needs to be, but his promise is going to happen no matter what. And what his purpose for you is going to happen no matter what. You're not going to be able to, you are not stronger than God or more powerful than God. You can't you can't derail yourself more than what he has in store for you. You can't. And you can try. I tried.
Like you're 18, 19, 20, and you're 21, you're still not married or whatever. You just want it to happen quick. It's like, it's never going to happen, because 28 is years away. Like you can't see into the
18,
future.
That's 10 years.
And so it's like you think it's never going to happen, but now you get to see like, no, it can still happen. Like even like if you're, some people don't get married till they're 35. Some people don't really get into their prime of their job, or maybe they change jobs when they're 33. Like it's like you've changed jobs multiple times. You're 32 and just entered into a completely new thing.
Totally new journey right now.
And so I think the need for permanence in things is what is really like not great, and what causes a lot of stress. I think is because you think like, oh, I gotta have this now and then that's forever. It's like, no, life is a lot more changing than you think.
It is.
So Lindsay, before we wrap up, I do this on every episode. It's kind of like just some final thoughts, like kind of the final thing you want to leave for the listeners before we end. So what's your final thing that you wanna let them know?
I think I just want to let them know, that God is, like we said, I think the faithful part is just he is faithful in your journey. And whether you're in a season of waiting, whether you're in the season where you're seeing that your prayers have been answered, maybe they haven't been yet, maybe they're not answered how you want them to be.
Yeah.
He is faithful. He's got a call in your life, and it's going to happen. It will happen. And I don't want to sound like like this cheerleader, like it's going to happen no matter what. Those people would annoy me so bad, but it's so true. And I can say it, I think, because I lived it, not because I'm just making this stuff up. It's like, no, I went through hardship, and I made my journey really unnecessarily difficult, but he was still faithful, so trust where you're at and trust God and trust where you're at second.
Yeah. I love that. That's so good. God is faithful.
He is.
He is. And so I think that's what everybody needs to know. Even when it looks bad,
yes,
when you're going through it, like, God's still faithful in that, because you can't see it now.
But there's purpose in it. Maybe
Pastor
you're shedding
Steve
something.
He preached about it. There's purpose in the pain.
Yes.
Because everything shapes us, and it sucks sometimes.
Oh, it's awful.
It's hard, but when it years down the line, when it happens, like, you're gonna realize it's worth it. Like, even for me, I'm about to be 24. Like, the last few years is just like I've gone through relationship stuff, and yes, that hurts. Yes, it sucks, but it's like, without that, what would I be like now?
Yes.
I wouldn't be who I am, and I wouldn't be on the journey of who God's making me to be without the hardship and without all of that. But the key is to realize that through it all, God is faithful.
Absolutely.
So I love that. Lindsay, thank you so much for being on this podcast. I think this was a great conversation. Love your energy and your passion for the the church and people. I think that's great. So thank you so much for being on.
Thank you. It's been fun.
Yeah, we'll have to have you on again sometime
soon.
Sounds good. But thank you guys. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. If you're watching this episode on YouTube, it was great. I hope this was challenging, inspiring, and encouraging. That's all we got for today. Peace out, people.